Following our exploration of visual learning, today we turn our attention to another significant learning style, the auditory learner. Understanding how individuals process information through sound is just as crucial for effective leadership and facilitation. By recognizing and catering to auditory preferences, we can create more engaging and impactful learning experiences for a substantial portion of our audience. At their core, auditory learners learn through listening. For them, the spoken word is the primary conduit for understanding and retaining information. While visual learners thrive on seeing, auditory learners connect most deeply with what they hear. They absorb knowledge best through lectures, discussions, audio recordings, and verbal explanations. Often, auditory learners have highly developed auditory skills and are generally good at speaking and presenting. They possess a natural inclination towards verbal communication and often excel in expressing themselves orally. This can make them valuable contributors in discussions and effective communicators within a team. Unlike their visual counterparts who think in pictures, auditory learners think in words rather than pictures. When presented with information, they are more likely to engage with the language itself, focusing on the sounds, rhythms, and nuances of the words being spoken. They might internally hear the information being presented, processing it through an internal monologue or dialogue. This auditory strength manifests in a variety of skills. Auditory learners often demonstrate strong abilities in listening, speaking, writing, with a keen ear for how words sound together. Storytelling, explaining, teaching, often verbally, using humor, relying on wordplay and delivery, understanding the syntax and meaning of words, remembering information, especially what they have heard, arguing their point of view, articulating their thoughts verbally, and analyzing language usage. They have a natural sensitivity to the spoken word and its intricacies. A common characteristic of auditory learners is that they are often able to recall conversations, jokes, and stories with remarkable accuracy. They seem to have a mental recording of what they've heard, allowing them to retrieve and recount information verbatim, or with great detail. This strong auditory memory is a key strength in their learning process. However, the reliance on sound can also present challenges. Auditory learners are easily distracted by people and things around them. Background noise, nearby conversations, or even subtle sounds can disrupt their concentration and make it difficult for them to focus on the auditory information they are trying to process. Creating a quiet and focused listening environment is crucial for their learning. You might also observe that auditory learners often talk to themselves when reviewing information, problem solving, or making decisions. This isn't necessarily odd behavior, it's their way of processing information through sound. By verbalizing their thoughts, they are essentially hearing themselves think, which aids in understanding and retention. Similarly, they often read out loud, their lips move, even when reading silently. This subvocalization helps them to engage with the text through their auditory processing. Finally, auditory learners are highly attuned to the emotional content conveyed through sound. They get emotional meaning and intent from vocal nuances. Tone of voice, pitch, inflection, and the speed of speech can provide them with significant cues about the speaker's feelings and the underlying message. As communicators, our vocal delivery is paramount when engaging auditory learners. So, how can we, as leaders and facilitators, effectively engage and support the auditory learners in our audience? Just as with visual learners, understanding their preferences allows us to tailor our approach for maximum impact. Firstly, emphasize verbal explanations and discussions. Provide clear and concise verbal explanations of concepts. Encourage questions and create opportunities for discussion, as this allows auditory learners to process information through listening and speaking. Secondly, utilize audio resources. Incorporate audio recordings, podcasts, and music where appropriate to reinforce learning. For example, recording key points of a lecture can be beneficial for auditory learners to review later. Thirdly, encourage verbal repetition and summarizing. Ask auditory learners to verbally summarize key concepts or instructions. This active engagement with the spoken word helps solidify their understanding. Fourthly, facilitate group discussions and brainstorming sessions. These interactive activities allow auditory learners to process information through listening to others' perspectives and articulating their own thoughts. Fifthly, read information aloud. When presenting important text or instructions, consider reading it aloud to cater to auditory learners. Sixthly, pay attention to your vocal delivery. Speak clearly, vary your tone and pace to maintain engagement, and be mindful of the emotional nuances in your voice. Seventhly, create a conducive listening environment. Minimize distractions and background noise as much as possible to help auditory learners focus on the spoken information. Eighthly, use mnemonic devices that involve sound or rhythm. Rhymes, songs, and other auditory cues can be effective memory aids for auditory learners. Ninthly, encourage verbal role-playing and storytelling. These activities allow auditory learners to actively engage with the material through speaking and listening. In conclusion, recognizing and catering to the needs of auditory learners is essential for creating truly inclusive and effective learning environments. By understanding their preference for sound and incorporating strategies that leverage their auditory strengths, we can unlock their learning potential and ensure that our message resonates deeply. Just as visual learners see to understand, auditory learners hear to comprehend and remember. Let's strive to communicate in a way that speaks directly to their preferred mode of learning.